Have you ever wished you had a map for your own mind? Well, today we're diving into a fascinating new idea that might be exactly that. It's called cognitive topology, and it's a completely different way to visualize the very structure of our thoughts. It's like a guide to that internal world we all live in every single day. You know, for decades, the go-to metaphor for the mind has been the computer, right? Just processing information like a machine. But what if that's the wrong metaphor entirely? What if your mind is less like a circuit board and more like a dynamic, shifting landscape with its own terrain, its own peaks and valleys, its own unique geometry? And this isn't just some abstract idea, it's an experience we all share. Seriously, think about it. You know those moments when you're under intense pressure and your thinking just feels laser focused? It's like you're in a narrow canyon and there's only one way forward. And then there are other times, maybe you're on a long walk, where your mind feels wide open and you're making all these surprising, creative connections. Well, these feelings aren't random. They're actually direct reflections of real structural changes happening in our cognitive terrain. And that right there is the core of cognitive topology. It's the study of this internal landscape. It gives us a formal language to understand the geometry of our thoughts as they move and shift in real time. It takes those gut feelings of being focused or open and puts them on a map. All right, so let's start exploring this hidden landscape, because this internal topology, this map, it doesn't just sit there in the background. Oh no, it actively shapes what we think, how we see the world, and what actions even seem possible to us at any given moment. So this cognitive landscape tends to take two main shapes. First, you've got a wide topology. This is the state where your mind is flexible, generative, and totally open to discovering new connections. Think brainstorming or daydreaming. That's a wide topology. Then, on the other hand, you have a steep topology, which is built for decisive, focused action. The very shape of your internal world is what's setting you up for a certain style of thinking. But what makes the landscape change its shape? What causes it to shift from that wide, open field to a narrow, steep canyon? Well, the main force, according to this model, is something called load. And its effect, it's a lot like gravity. Now, when we hear the word load, we usually think of stress or just how hard a task feels, but in cognitive topology, it's way more precise. Here, load is a structural force. It's this active pressure that literally reshapes the geometry of your mind. It's bending and warping that internal landscape. The source material really nails it with this quote: "Load, therefore, behaves like gravity within the cognitive landscape." Think about that. Just like physical gravity pulls objects along a certain path, cognitive load pulls your thoughts along specific trajectories. It makes some paths of thought super easy to follow and others almost impossible to even get to. So when there's low load, our cognitive landscape is wide and flat, which lets our thoughts just wander and explore freely. But as that load cranks up, the topology gets steeper and narrower. Our options seem to just collapse, and our thinking gets channeled down this single, decisive path. And here's the crucial part. This isn't a conscious choice we're making. It's a direct consequence of the physics of your mind. This explains perfectly why trying to have a creative breakthrough when you're on a tight deadline feels impossible. The very terrain of your mind is working against you. Okay, so we've got a landscape and it's being shaped by the gravity of load. So, how do we actually move around in there? Well, our journey is defined by two more key ideas: state and elicitation. Your state is basically your position and your orientation within that landscape. Think of it like your mind's internal GPS at that very moment. And it's not just a mood, it's a structural configuration of your attention, your expectations, and your available mental energy. It determines how you're going to navigate the slopes and valleys shaped by load. So, if your state is where you are on the map, what moves you from one point to another? The answer is communication. But, and this is a big but, we're not just talking about an exchange of data here. In this model, every single interaction is a force that can push or pull our state across the cognitive landscape. And this process has a name: elicitation. Elicitation is this incredibly powerful, dynamic process. It all starts when a signal, a question, a weird sound, a new piece of info enters your system. That signal immediately starts to reshape your internal topology. This reshaping then alters the trajectory of your thoughts, and out of that new trajectory, a new behavior pops out. Just think about that. A simple question can literally change the geometry of someone else's mind. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. When you combine the landscape's shape, the force of load, and the movement from elicitation, something fascinating happens.
the whole system tends to naturally settle into one of two main stable modes of thinking.
And here's the key insight. We don't consciously choose these modes. They're what's called stable attractor configurations. The best way to picture them is like deep valleys in the landscape. The geometry of your terrain, which has been sculpted by load, just naturally pulls you down into one of these two valleys. This is why shifting from a stressed, focused state to an open, creative one can feel like such a huge struggle. You literally have to fight gravity to climb out of a deep cognitive well. So you have the directive mode, which is the result of that steep topology. It pulls us toward focused, decisive thinking, giving us clarity when we need it most. And then you have the exploratory mode, which emerges from that wide topology. It supports generative, flexible thinking that leads to brand new connections and possibilities. They're really just two sides of the same cognitive coin. Both are essential, and both are just natural outcomes of the underlying geometry of our mind.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Why does having this new map for the mind actually matter? Well, the implications are massive. Not just for understanding ourselves, but for how we communicate with each other and how we design the intelligent systems of the future. I mean, this one framework offers a unified explanation for so many things we all experience. It shows why our decision-making can suddenly snap from thoughtful to reactive when we're under pressure. It pinpoints the true root of miscommunication. It's not just a disagreement over facts, it's a fundamental misalignment between two people's internal landscapes. And it gives us a blueprint for what a truly adaptive AI might actually look like.
Yeah, looking to the future, the goal for building truly intelligent synthetic minds isn't just about processing more data faster. It's about achieving what the source material calls topological competence. This is the ability for a system to sense, manage, and deliberately adapt its own internal geometry in response to changing loads and goals. That would be the mark of true structural intelligence. So I'll leave you with a thought to take with you. This model gives us a brand new map to our own minds. And looking at that map, the question becomes, if you could actually see your own cognitive landscape right now, its peaks, its valleys, the forces shaping it, what would you change?